Your data will now be stored in the external volume at /opt/data directory, and thus will remain even if you delete the Docker container. The docker ps command is good enough to get basic details about containers like their names and IDs. But if you would like to see additional details about a specific container, use the docker inspect command and provide the container name or ID. It returns all details of a container in a JSON format, such as the state, mounts, configuration data, network settings, etc. Remember to use it when you're required to find details on a container. And finally, how do we see the logs of a container we ran in the background? For example, I ran my simple web application using the -d parameter, and it ran the container in a detached mode. How do I view the logs, which happens to be the contents written to the standard out of that container? Use the docker logs command and specify the container ID or name like this. Well, that's it for this lecture. Head over to the challenges and practice working with Docker commands. Let us start with a simple web application written in Python. This piece of code is used to create a web application that displays a web page with a background color. If you look closely into the application code, you will see a line that sets the background color to red. Now, that works just fine. However, if you decide to change the color in the future, you will have to change the application code. It is a best practice to move such information out of the application code and into, say, an environment variable called app_color. The next time you run the application, set an environment variable called app_color to a desired value, and the application now has a new color. Once your application gets packaged into a Docker image, you would then run it with the docker run command followed by the name of the image. However, if you wish to pass the environment variable as we did before, you would now use the docker run command's -e option to set an environment variable within the container. To deploy multiple containers with different colors, you would run the docker command multiple times and set a different value for the environment variable each time. So how do you find the environment variable set on a container that's already running? Use the docker inspect command to inspect the properties of a running container. Under the config section, you will find the list of environment variables set on the container. Well, that's it for this lecture on configuring environment variables in Docker. Hello and welcome to this lecture on Docker images. In this lecture, we're going to see how to create your own image. Now, before that, why would you need to create your own image? It could either be because you cannot find a component or a service that you want to use as part of your application on Docker Hub already, or you and your team decided that the application you're developing will be Dockerized for ease of shipping and deployment. In this case, I'm going to containerize an application, a simple web application that I have built using the Python Flask framework. First, we need to understand what we are containerizing or what application we are creating an image for and how the application is built. So start by thinking what you might do if you want to deploy the application manually. We write down the steps required in the right order. I'm creating an image for a simple web application. If I were to set it up manually, I would start with an operating system like Ubuntu, then update the source repositories using the apt command, then install dependencies using the apt command, then install Python dependencies using the pip command, then copy over the source code of my application to a location like opt, and then finally run the web server using the flask command. Now that I have the instructions, create a Docker file using these. Here's a quick